When I was a kid, around 7 years old, I checked out 2 books from my elementary school's library. One, a book about Matt Kenseth, and the other a book about Kurt Busch. After reading them, I decided I liked Kurt Busch more. Why? Probably because he drove the number 2 Miller Lite Dodge, and blue is my favorite color. Nothing against Matt Kenseth, but black and yellow just wasn't my thing. At that point in time, I didn't really have an interest in sports. I had played soccer for a year, but I wasn't too big on it. Football confused me, as I didn't know what a touchdown was. So after checking out those 2 books, and who knows why I did, I decided I was going to follow NASCAR. Now you are probably thinking, who cares? I didn't come here to learn about your life, who even are you? I came here to watch a video on NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup. Well, after watching NASCAR for about a year, my parents surprised me with a copy of NASCAR 05 for the GameCube. I exclusively played this game for a long time, at least until I got into football and fell down that video game rabbit hole. My point here is that this game has a special place in my heart, and it's well deserved. NASCAR 05 has one of the greatest career modes ever seen in a sports game. Not only that, the game was incredibly solid. The driving was challenging, the physics felt realistic, and the game was fun. It wasn't iRacing or a hyper-realistic PC NASCAR sim. It was an accessible game that any NASCAR fan could pick up and play. As with many sports games from this era, NASCAR 05 is still well regarded to this day. The current NASCAR Heat series isn't bad, especially when compared to the Technics developed NASCAR games that preceded it. But there was just something special about those older EA NASCAR games. I'm not calling NASCAR 05 the best NASCAR game ever made, but it was one of the best. If you aren't really into NASCAR and don't think you'd have much interest in this game, I think you should give this game a chance anyways, and I'll show you why. It is simply a fantastic racing game, and I believe anyone would have a blast playing it. Frankly, this game is dope. Fight to the Top. That is the name of the career mode in NASCAR 05, which was new to EA's NASCAR series. It starts out with no one other than Ryan Newman pulling up next to you in a city street. You then race him. Why? I do not know. After that, he decides to offer you a contract to drive his number 192 Dodge Featherlight Series car. Now, most people know that NASCAR has multiple leagues or series. If you aren't a pro NASCAR watcher, you may not be aware of this. The Top Series, originally known as the Winston Cup Series, not to be confused with the Piston Cup Series, was known as the NASCAR Nextel Cup in this game. It shortly changed to the NASCAR Sprint Cup and today is known as the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series. This is the Top Series, where you would see the Daytona 500, the cars are the fastest, and all your favorite drivers drive. Behind the Top Series is the NASCAR Infinity Series, previously known as the Nationwide Series, and in this game, the Busch Series. However, because the inclusion of alcohol branding would give a NASCAR game an M rating, 05 called the series the NASCAR National Series, although your agent and the pre-race commentator would still refer to it as the Busch Series. Oops. This was the main minor league for NASCAR, as drivers in this series would race for a chance to get a look in the Cup Series. However, big-time drivers such as Dale Jr. or Kyle Busch would race in this series too. Behind that series was the Truck Series, known as the Craftsman Truck Series in the game, and today known as the Gander Outdoors Truck Series. And finally, the Featherlight Series is an open-wheeled, smaller track-oriented series for new drivers trying to make a name for themselves, which is where you start in this game. The series is now known as the Whelen Modified Tour. Anyways, in this career mode you start from the bottom and try to get to the top, hence the name, Fight to the Top. Unlike most career modes in sports games where you spend an hour or 2 before hitting the big leagues, you have to race a full season in each series. It takes a while. You get signed by an agent and you begin racing. What made this career mode differentiate itself from others at the time was its RPG-like hero-villain meter. The way you raced affected your status amongst other drivers, and every move you made on the track was tracked. You could either be a good guy who shares his draft with other drivers for a mutually beneficial result, or you could be a villain and use the all-new Intimidator feature to rattle other drivers and also straight up wreck them. This is what I chose to do. I found it very difficult to be a hero, as it takes a lot of skill to not hit anybody. If you become rivals with another driver, expect to see them yelling at you or trying to fight you after a race. You will then get the option to apologize to them or ignore them, further developing your status as a hero or villain. Drivers who are your allies will help you by drafting with you, as well as let you pass underneath. Rival drivers will be aggressive, bump you, and block you at all costs. You will also get approached by major NASCAR drivers such as Jeff Gordon, challenging you to a race with production cars on more traditional racing courses. Winning these races unlocks the car you drove in the race, which allows you to drive them in other game modes. More on that later. As you race, you start getting offers to test drive new vehicles. Shortly into my career, while replaying the mode for this video, I received a call from my agent letting me know that a Craftsman truck sponsored by Hugger's Oranges could be mine. I just had to drive it around a track a few times, and if I did a good job, they'd offer me a contract. And they did, because I did a good job. I now had the option to sign a 1-year deal with the Hugger's Oranges Craftsman truck, or I could hold off and wait for a better offer, maybe one with a better truck or a larger salary. I chose to sign then and there, simply because I wanted to start driving in the truck series and I was desperate. Eventually, you'll get offers from the National and Nextel Cup series, but it doesn't stop there. If you want, when a contract expires in one series, you don't have to sign another one at all. You'll have more offers on the table if you had a good year, but if you think you're above racing in the Featherlight series, you don't need to continue. Or you could. In fact, you could spend the whole game racing exclusively in the Featherlight series. After each race, you make money and gain fans. You'll get opportunities to sign autographs or race for charity. But with more money in the bank comes more fun. You can buy a racing team. Instead of contracts being offered to you, you can turn the tables and offer contracts to other drivers and have them drive for you while you take a cut of their winnings. To truly master this mode, you would want to own a team in every series and have drivers driving for you. Being a successful Cup Series driver racing for his own team is the ultimate power move. The mode is tied together with great attention to detail and in-depth stat tracking, which is a big thing for me. All your career statistics are tracked across every single race you race in, from any year you raced. In this era, EA made some of the greatest and most in-depth game modes in all their sports games. Beyond Fight to the Top are some more traditional modes you'd expect. There's a Race Now mode where you can jump into any race with any driver, or even drive with the production cars you unlocked in Fight to the Top, as well as a season mode where you pick a driver and go through a season in any series. And of course, there is the all-new Chase for the Cup mode. This game was the first NASCAR game to have such a mode, as the all-new Chase system had just been introduced to the sport. It was basically a playoff, where different races had higher points a driver could earn from winning them. Once the chase started, the top 10 drivers in points were in the playoff and were now exclusively fighting to win the championship. The chase has changed a lot over the years, but that doesn't matter too much as we are talking about NASCAR 05. The Lightning Challenge and Dodge Speed Zone modes put you in the middle of mostly real scenarios from NASCAR history, allowing the player to recreate classic moments or enjoy a fun challenge that is not as time-consuming as completing an entire race. While playing any mode in the game, you gain what is known as skill points. These points grant the player the right to purchase Thunder Plates, which unlock things such as drivers, like the late Dale Earnhardt, courses to drive on in Play Now, alternative color and sponsor schemes for cars, a pit crew of clones of Mr. Clean, and more. In terms of drivers and tracks, this game mostly gets it right. Originally, Jeremy Mayfield was going to be the cover driver, but EA made a last-second decision to go with Kevin Harvick. Out of spite, Mayfield asked to be removed from the game. So for all you Jeremy Mayfield fans out there, you may be disappointed to find out that you can't play as him in this game. Pocono Raceway is not in the game due to licensing issues. But besides that, this game is loaded. Not only does it include every other track, but the game has fictional tracks, such as an infield Daytona 500. Other tracks include the Dodge Raceway Stadium, which has a football field in the middle of it, the Old Spice High Endurance Speedway, which is a non-linear course similar to Watkins Glen, and many other small featherlight courses and infield tracks. This game can be real hard. On higher difficulties, a slow car is going to be slow. You won't be winning too many races with that Huggers Oranges truck very often. If you like to win, lower difficulties make it pretty easy, although a slip-up could cost you a race, and the top few drivers will swap places with you quite often. But on higher difficulties, you'll be dead last if you make any mistake. You'll need a decent car, a decent start, and you'll need to rely on drafting to stay with the pack, as well as masterful timing of pitting and engaging your fuel. AI is pretty smart, and will try to pass, and decide whether they want to let you by or block you based on your standing with them. I feel like the difficulty is dynamic enough, where pretty much anyone could find one that works for them. The graphics and details of this game are phenomenal. Driving in the evening is very immersive as the sky will slowly change from a sunset to the darkness of night. The clouds move across the sky and the crowd appears lively. There is even a Goodyear blimp flying above the course. The damage model is pretty convincing, with cars catching flames if enough damage is done. 43 cars take the field without any sort of frame drop, all with complete sponsors and decals. It is a very detailed game. The only real complaint would be that the Featherlight and Craftsman cars lack a manufacturer, but at least the top two Cup Series are accurate, unlike NASCAR 09. This game also has a custom car garage, where you can create cars to drive in Race Now and Season by choosing a manufacturer, paint scheme, colors, and sponsors. Remember how I mentioned earlier that the game could not include alcohol branding in order to keep an E for everyone rating? Well, that is very clear when viewing certain cars in this game. Rusty Wallace, driver of the Miller Lite No. 2 Dodge at the time, had his name as the sponsor of his car instead of the beverage. However, the logo looked almost identical to a Miller Lite logo, so it wasn't too big of a deal, nor something the average person would probably notice. What was a bit more noticeable was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s No. 8 Budweiser Chevrolet. The car was instead sponsored by Junior. Just looks a bit off to me. There are a few more examples of this, and I always found it interesting how the game's artists would create these fake brands and logos. The sounds on the track are a joy to listen to. Cars vroom like you'd expect. Your crew chief and spotter aren't too repetitive and don't get annoying easily. And the game's soundtrack is peak 2004. The game's main theme, Thunder, would get just about anyone pumped up enough to hop in a car and drive 200 miles per hour into a wall. Beyond the main theme, the soundtrack is full of bangers. NASCAR 05 is one of my all-time favorite sports games. I just can't get enough of it. The Fight to the Top mode is so in-depth that it'll take a long time to get bored of it. Any NASCAR fan, or anyone looking for a fun racing game, needs to play this game. I can't say enough good things about it. 7-year-old me loved this game, and so does 20-year-old me. And of course, if you're just looking for chaos, you can always drive backwards and try to destroy as many cars as possible. Whenever you hit a car head-on, there's a good chance their engine will explode, which knocks them out of the race. If you keep targeting the lead driver and do this over the course of a 500-lap race, there's a good chance you'll find yourself in first place as the last driver standing. So, unofficially, there's a whole different strategy to playing this game. Playing the correct way, however, is worth it. Driving 3 wide coming into the third corner of the Daytona 500 is nerve-wracking. No game really gets my adrenaline pumping as much as this game does when the white flag is waved. There's a certain charm to this game that just makes me happy playing it. Maybe it's just nostalgia, but I don't think that's the case. NASCAR 2005 Chase for the Cup is simply a fantastic game. Thanks for watching.